She's a motivator, a self-made multimillionaire, spiritual guide to students in over 90 countries, nutritionist and wellness educator, and founder of 3 international schools.
A fine artist whose works can be found in private collections around the world, a fierce defender of children and animals, and a former Wall Street attorney who left the concrete jungle for the tropics over 20 years ago, where her life's mission has been to teach people all over the world how to master their energy, reclaim their personal authority and sovereignty, and develop a real relationship with the true Jesus.
But to us, she's our mom, who loved us unconditionally from birth to now, who has been there for us 24/7 our entire lives without fail, always putting us first.
The mom who protected, nurtured, empowered, and initiated us, making us her number one priority for the past 22 years.
The mom who creates a home filled with love, empowerment, support, and guidance.
Laughter, fun, and really good food. And now, welcome to She Can Have It All with your host, Liana.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of She Can Have It All. This is your podcast host, Liana, and today we're diving into the concept of the divine masculine and the divine feminine within relationships. So this whole episode is devoted and dedicated to relationships that are not just conscious, right? Because we hear that term thrown around a lot. What is a conscious relationship? But going above and beyond that, what does a relationship look like where one partner is embodying the divine feminine energy and one partner is embodying the divine masculine? And I'm going to be also talking about why so many women today end up taking a more masculine role in their relationships. It's the predominant mode right now in the majority of relationships, women taking on a more masculine role. And I'm also going to be covering why men often shut down or run when emotions run high in the feminine. And importantly, how both partners can step into harmony with each other. I think, just right off the bat, starting off, one of the things that has always been so unfortunate is that people go into relationships feeling, believing, thinking, and having been taught that everything's equal in a relationship. So when you teach something for women, the men say, well, what about us? And when there's something, let's say empowering for men, the women say, but what about us? And right from the beginning, you step into my world, you need to leave that mind-controlled, brainwashed belief behind you because it's not equal. And the energy of the divine feminine and the divine masculine coexist in a perfect, beautiful, magnificent dance that brings you the most rich, beautiful, and amazing experiences you can have, right? As a human, as all relationships do. Relationships with our children, relationships with our close friends, right? Relationships are the rich tapestry that become our lives. And when you can have divine relationships, you're in harmony all the time, but there's no concept of equal. There's no 50-50. There's none of this sort of nitpicking in a very linear way, in a way that puts you into your mind. And that's also what's so problematic to me about things like couples therapy. Because what are you doing in couples therapy? You're talking. And you're talking from what you think is your, cognitive brain, but a lot of the old brain, the reptilian brain, the wounding, mother wounding, father wounding, projecting onto your partner, that comes up. And in the majority of cases, those patterns get reinforced. They get even more anchored and people become even more indignant. And if you truly desire to have a beautiful, magical, loving, quantum, harmonious relationship with a partner, you have to take a deep breath. You have to leave behind everything you've learned about relationships. You have to leave behind everything you've been told about what is feminine, what is masculine, how does that relate to gender? People get all up in arms about these things. you need to soften. You need to soften. And you need to receive. Whether you're male or female, you need to lean into the very essence of receptivity, even to hear and understand what I'm teaching. And it's so important that you turn off your left brain. When I talk about relationships, I talk about quantum relationships, divine relationships, relationships that are so beyond anything you've probably seen modeled in your life. And I want to encourage you to release yourself from the bondage, release yourself from the restrictions. And, you may hear things that I say and your brain is going, I don't think so. That doesn't seem fair. Try to just breathe into those topics. If you find yourself being triggered, I know we have a lot of listeners who may be relationship counselors or even therapists or doctors of, PhDs, things like that. And there's a lot of validity to research out there. There's a lot of validity to those fields of science, but they just don't have a place in what I'm teaching here today and what I'm sharing. And so before even going deep into the topics, I encourage you to just feel into your body. Feel any areas where resistance comes up during the topic. And understand that I have awareness of why those things happen for you, right? People have a long history of life on this earth. And you have aspects of mother wound, aspects of father wound, aspects of seeking to be healed of those wounds through your partner, and a lot of projections, which are the result of that. So for purposes of this podcast episode, I feel like by the time you're done, you're going to feel as if you've had a massive energy clearing of whatever it is that made you rigid, scared, afraid, distrustful, and in a place where you're trying to control a relationship or manage a relationship, whether you're male or female. And I want you to understand that relationship problems are actually not relationship problems, they're personal problems. And I would take that even further to say they're not problems. They're personal wounds and personal traumas. The problems are just the symptoms. And underneath it all, if you go a little deeper and look a little bit with more depth, you'll see that it's fear of being alone, fear of betrayal that is underlying all of these, quote, problems in your relationships. But even deeper than that, the deepest fear, the deepest wound of every single human being, and it shows up in every single relationship until it is addressed and healed, is the fear that you will not be loved. That is a primal fear. That when you pull back the curtain and you look at the fear of not being loved, not being perhaps worthy of being loved, when you actually sit in that for a minute, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's the source of all loneliness. It's the source of all clinging. It's the source of all control. It's the source of unhappiness in all relationships. It's the source of seeking distractions, things like porn or alcohol or drugs, which absolutely decimate any chance of a spiritually conscious relationship. But those things come from this deep, deep, hidden fear that no one's going to love you. And Of course, that comes from childhood. That comes from abandonment wound, which everybody has. And this isn't a podcast episode on that topic, but it does have to be mentioned because that's where the fear comes from. No matter how great someone thinks their parents were, there's abandonment wound in virtually every human being. And what sits right underneath that is a fear that you're not worthy of being loved. And when you look at the quantum energy of a relationship with a partner, and you look at the frequency and you look at the feedback loop in your own relationships in the past, in the present, I guarantee you that you will see that the relationship itself is built on a frequency of fear at some level. Unless you were completely conscious and had healed, mother wound, father wound, and you're embracing your divine feminine or your divine masculine, and then you came into partnership. That's the goal, right? That's beautiful. But it's not likely for most people. And so even if you're a person who is in a great relationship now, which is amazing, and you have beat all the odds, really, because even people that are in long-term relationships, they report high levels of unhappiness, high levels of loneliness, lack of connection, lack of intimacy, sexual issues within the relationship. And if you are in a really good relationship and you have high levels of satisfaction and high levels of trust and confidence in the partnership, and you feel loved and you feel seen and you feel heard and you feel acknowledged and you have passion and you have healthy sexual relationship, again, you're of the smallest percentage, right? If you have that. But even if you have that, there's always room for growth. There's always room to become an even better partner, because that's where it starts, right? A lot of people go to couples counseling because they really believe deep down that their partner needs fixing. And they think that the relationship is, has a problem. But a relationship is not a third entity. It's not a thing. What a relationship is you, and it's the other person. And when people go into counseling, they're almost always looking to have the other person get fixed. And it's usually the person who initiates the counseling who feels, okay, counseling can help us, but it's because my partner needs to do things differently. I can't say all the time. I can't say 100% of the time because it's not 100%. But that's generally the frequency. And that frequency is fear. And that frequency is a person reaching out to try to get help, to rely on, someone that, let's say they believe in that mode of healing, which can be helpful to some degree. And they're hoping that this third party can shift the behaviors, the attitudes, the mindset of the other person. But what I'm here to tell you is that the only way, truly the only way to deepen your relationship, if you're in one, or if you're not, in a future relationship, the only way to truly achieve a state of divine conscious relationship is for you to do the work on yourself and become the best partner that you can possibly become, and to continue evolving into that. And I don't want to even use the word work, like continue working on that, because it's not really work. It's our gift to be able to have such beauty in relationships. And we evolve into that. right? We evolve into better and better versions of who we are in the context of a relationship. And what's so powerful about that, a lot of people ask me things like, Liana, if I have a partner and he's not doing the work, he's not doing the healing, he still has profound mother wound and he has the, I always tell my students the same thing. Don't worry about it. Why are you putting energy into what the other person is doing? Because the energy we each need to put into our own selves is massive. Everybody's always so worried about what the other person's doing. And that's a lot of bypassing. It's a lot of unnecessary waste of your energy because your focus becomes about another person who you have zero control over. And I think the first place in either shifting your current relationship into the most magical relationship on earth or, preparing for one in the future, the first thing you have to do is admit and accept that you have zero control over another human being. Zero. And you have to breathe into that. You have to take a deep breath. And you have to feel the tension in your neck or your shoulders if you have any when I say that. So many people are afraid of losing their partner. And they grip tighter and harder. And they believe that they have some kind of control. And they start behaving in ways that are control-oriented behaviors. And when you do that, you are losing opportunities, first and foremost, losing opportunities to have your own self evolve, which actually is the only thing that would increase the likelihood of your relationship continuing on and becoming more harmonious. But you're also creating more and more energetic space. Every time you try to control another person, it's the same concept with your kids in that relationship. The more you try to control, the more you try to grip and manipulate behaviors, the more space you're creating between you and your partner. The more you grasp and grip and try to control, the more space you're creating between you and your partner, more distance, more of a gap, pushing them away. Because not a single person, be it a child or your partner, feels good about control and manipulation. Because really what control is, it's manipulation. And, when you look in the context of raising kids, my kids are 23 and 18 now, there hasn't been one moment in their 23 and 18 years respectively where I've tried to control what they do or grip or force or make demands. You need to do this, 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 this. The minute those words come out of your mouth, you need to do, and then fill in the blanks, you are creating a stuck frequency. Energetically, what's happening? The person freezes, becomes resistant to you, puts up a wall. And what happens in intimate relationships when people start making demands, saying things like you need to, and trying to control, you have to know that the other person, even if they don't say it, even if you think everything's fine because they're like, okay, I'll do that, I'll do these things, right? You have to know and understand that at the quantum level, at the energetic level, you are breaking down the connection between you and that person. And that person has just erected a rigid wall. Might be small, it depends on the context. It's a natural human response when somebody tries to control us. Now, some people who grew up with very strict authoritarian families, although the majority of families are authoritarian. I'm the parent, it's my way. This is how we do things in this family. None are things that have ever come out of my mouth. I didn't raise my kids in an authoritarian structure. No hierarchy. They're full-fledged human beings from the time they were born with their own autonomy and their own sovereignty. But for some people who have very strict authoritarian parents, they may feel or think they feel, right, safer with control. You see that dynamic in a lot of the distorted relationships where, right now out in the world, in the wild, on social media, they call it the trad wife. It's a trend, right? And it's a lot of control of women. It's putting women in a place of subservience. Huge mistake, because women do not thrive in that role. We'll get into some of that in today's podcast. But it's all about control. A lot of that's based on faulty religious programming, that a male should be the head of a household, should be in control. And so a lot of women who grew up with that type of authoritarian structure may feel initially or think that that's the way to go and that's how they feel safest. And you'll see them out there on social media saying it. I can see right through it. They're just lying. It's a frequency that it's so inauthentic. They're trying to fit into something that is not who they are. Because every human being is the happiest, the most passionate, the most loyal, the most joy-filled when we are fully expressing who we are. And if any part of us is shut down due to control, we are not any of those things. We are not our most joyful self. We are not our most passionate self. We're going through the motions. And in the context of the divine feminine and masculine, when each partner, and it doesn't matter if it's a man and a woman, two women, two men, I don't want to get into that because people try to get distracted on the gender thing. It's energy. It's energy. Because when you die, your genitals go with you. But your core essence of who you've embodied on this earth is who you are. You got to pick one if you want to be in a relationship. And I say that only because I had written a post on my Instagram, I don't know, about a month ago on this topic, actually. And someone came into my comments very, very triggered. And I had empathy for him. I get it, because these are triggering things to wounded people. And I'm trying to help people get out of that. But he was very triggered and was going down this road of, gender this, gender that. I'm like, hey, look, I don't know if you actually read the caption. I think you only looked at the slides because I actually addressed this, that it doesn't matter what your gender is. It matters what energy are you predominantly moving through this life in. And he came back with a retort that was, well, I flip-flop, I go back and forth. And, I said, well, that is why you're not happy. That is why you're triggered with everything I'm saying. It's why you do not exist in a state of peace, which was obvious. You don't need to be even, intuitive to know. It was obvious by how he was writing back. And I felt for him because I feel like he was telling the truth. I felt like he was saying he really does go back and forth. But that's an unhappy life. That's a confusing life. That's a life without safety. Because we all have, for our incarnation, for this lifetime, we have a predominant energy that we move through life. Now, every woman, let's say you're in your divine feminine predominantly. Of course, you have aspects of masculine energy. And those aspects of masculine energy also need to be nurtured within you. And a lot of the time you will engage in those elements in arenas like your work. Let's say you're an entrepreneur. You will probably tap into your masculine energy at times for certain aspects of your work. Or maybe when you're out in public, right? And you step more into a masculine frequency because that's what makes you feel safer in the world, right? Out in the world. And yes, we can effortlessly move in and out of that frequency as needed, especially when we understand it. And when you know how to do that and you've mastered your own personal energy, you're peaceful, you're happy, you're internally harmonious. Because you cannot have a harmonious relationship with another human if you don't have internal harmony. And there's no chance of having internal harmony if you are in a place where you are predominantly female one week and the next week predominantly male. It doesn't work like that. You can move into your masculine as a woman. Again, as I said, when you need it. Maybe it's for business, maybe it's when you're out in the world, but your predominant energy is divine feminine. And likewise for a man. At times they may need to move into their more feminine aspects and they need to feel safe doing that. Like it's okay to do that. Because for the most part, men are taught anything that's even remotely soft, yielding, or receptive is female and it's wrong. You're not a man if you do that. And that's incorrect. Because a man who is predominantly in his divine masculine, but who has the capacity to be in his own divine feminine, the aspects of his divine feminine at certain times, that is the most stable, strong version of masculine that exists. And it's so sad that little boys are not taught that boys growing into teenagers are not taught that teenagers growing into men are not taught that. Because it comes at such a great disservice to their mental health. Where men are taught that, emotions are feminine. It's not okay to show emotion. And they bottle it up. And, we have very, very high rates of depression among men. So what you want to look at in terms of your energy for a relationship is, what's my predominant energy? Divine feminine or divine masculine? And, just to give you a picture imagery, your predominant energy is, when I say predominant, I mean like 80% of the time would be you in your feminine or you in your masculine. The other 20% would be you in the opposite. Comfortably, happily, effortlessly, when you need to use that energy. And unlike the man who commented on my post, who was saying he's literally, like two different people. Some days he feels predominantly masculine, and then some days he's predominantly feminine. And that's a very disharmonious state of being. Which is why I said earlier at the beginning of the podcast that women right now are occupying too much masculine in their intimate relationships. There are reasons for that, and I'm going to go into those reasons because it's so important. But there is a frequency on Earth right now where a huge percentage of women are occupying more masculine frequency in their relationships, in their partnerships, in their marriages, more masculine than they are feminine. And they're met with distorted masculine, right? Because of course there's divine masculine and there's distorted masculine, which is what we see in the world. Just like there's divine feminine and there's distorted feminine. That's the other important thing here. it's nobody's fault. Like, it's not women's fault. It's not men's fault. And if you want to keep seeking fault, you will never have a spiritually conscious, divinely harmonious relationship with another person. I see this also out there on different pages that come across my feed where women, it's groups of women, and they're saying this is all men's fault and the way men, treat women is horrible. Is it horrible? Of course it is. No, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to know that. But take a step back. Who's raising those men? Who's raising those men? And, anytime I say that, public facing, right? Not to my own communities, largely people who have done a lot of healing in mother wound and father wound, but anything that is public facing, like my social media, people get very angry at that. And they want to go down a road of, oh my God, that's victim blaming. No, it's not. It's to show you the consistent wounding and trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And you cannot look at the men in the world. You just can't. You can't. If men who are out there, the men that are abusing women, assaulting women, trying to control and oppress women, who are abusive in a multitude of ways, maybe high-level narcissists, physically, sexually, whatever, you have to look at where did that man come from? Not to excuse him, no. And anyone who's ever listened to my podcast or read my work, absolutely every person needs to be accountable for their own actions once you're an adult, regardless of what happened to you as a child. You still have to be accountable for yourself. And it's hard. But you can't continue to go back and blame your trauma. You have to heal your trauma. You have a responsibility to heal your trauma. So of course we can understand why someone goes in and, commits crimes, or someone goes and assaults women. We know there's a reason. We know that's not a happy person. Happy, joyful people who feel loved, taking us right back to that core fear of not being loved. Happy, joyful people who feel loved, who love themselves, who feel worthy. We don't go out there doing shitty things. We just don't. Right? And when someone behaves in ways that are harmful to others, as in the case of men harming women, again, it's obvious why or where they may have arrived at that behavior. We don't have to know specifics, but we certainly know they're not happy, they're not loved, they don't love themselves for sure, and they're living in absolute fear and terror. And men who harm women are walking, talking, breathing, living mother wounds, gaping mother wounds, because they are taking their repressed rage and their repressed anger. But underneath that is a lonely, sad, tragic little boy who doesn't feel loved. Now, of course, they need to be in jail. They need to be, it's horrific, right? We have to be able to, from a spiritual perspective, not from a, new age bullshit, like, oh, everything's love and light. No, it's not. Dark people, evil people, bad people need to be dealt with because we're living in the 3D. But when we're talking about divine, spiritual, conscious relationships in this podcast, we have to take a look at those things. We have to take a look at those things. And we have to see that men who are abusers, rapists, assaulting women, controlling women, thinking they're supposed to control women, thinking they have to be the head of a household to control women. These are terrified little boys in big bodies. Literally. It's literally what they are and who they are. And through aggression and force and rage and anger, they're projecting their gaping, oozing, wounded, bleeding, pus-filled, infected mother wound. They are the men that are the biggest examples on this planet of what mother wound looks like. So you have to look at the mother. I'm a mother of a boy and a girl, now a young man and a young woman. And loving mothers, unconditionally loving mothers, like in my case, who raised my kids with respect, with trust, with safety, with nurturing, right? All the roles of a mother: protection, nurturing, and then empowering, initiating on a foundation of unconditional love. When you raise your kids in that environment, they're not going out in the world assaulting people, harming people, raging at people, angry at the world, flipping the middle finger, driving down the road. They're not, in the same way that I'm not. And the reason this is essential conversation in a relationship topic podcast is because you have to understand the foundation. You have to understand the big picture. You can't just compartmentalize and say, oh, I want to talk about relationships and, my partner's doing this. That's what happens in therapy. And that's why it doesn't work. Long term, it doesn't work. It can help people get through some obstacles. Yeah. Maybe some people like just having an opportunity to speak and have their partner hear and be quiet, because maybe at home the partner talks over them and maybe the therapist maintains some, mode of control over the environment. Okay. But is that relationship alchemizing into the most passionate, loving, harmonious, growth-oriented relationship possible? No, it's not. That's not what therapy does. It's not even its intention. It doesn't even pretend to be that. And most therapy sessions treat a relationship like it's a third thing. So you have to look at that. And why I started down that road on that topic is because I said you can't be looking for fault. And I see all these groups of women wanting to blame men. And of course, groups of men wanting to blame women in a toxic merry-go-round of misery. I think and believe and know, and I've never been proven wrong or shown wrong. I would love to be wrong, actually, on this issue. I believe there are so few divinely conscious, passionate, loving, supportive, trusting, growing, right? Because the best relationships, divine conscious relationships, are relationships in which both people grow. A relationship that is divinely conscious provides the most rich soil for both people to continue evolving. It never stops. To continue evolving into the best version of yourself, which of course means, among other things, you're becoming a better and better partner. The relationship itself, when it's divinely conscious, when both people are occupying their divine masculine and their divine feminine, the relationship itself becomes the incubator for the partnership to get better. Because each person is getting better, is evolving always. And there's no end to that, which is beautiful. Which is beautiful. We just continue to blossom like a lotus, right? We just keep going and going and going. Because the levels to which we can become better partners are infinite. And how great is that? We can continue to become better and have even more understanding, even more compassion, even more love, more trust, more growth in a relationship. And you can't be looking for fault. You cannot be looking for fault. And when you have conversations in your relationships that center on, you did this, you need to do that, you are already creating distance, creating rigidity. I think fundamental to having a beautiful, conscious relationship is that you absolutely have to purge yourself and clear yourself. Clear yourself of the duality that's in the matrix, that's in the 3D. Clear yourself of the energy that, let's say you're a woman listening, that men are the problem. You have to. That's why I'm going into so much depth in this episode about this topic. It comes before anything else. And I know because I have worked with thousands and thousands of people. I have students in 90 countries, 13 years of doing the work that I do. And I have heard over and over and over again that the opposite gender is the problem. They're not. And that's why I gave you the example of the mothers and the mother wound. Because it just keeps circling back, right? It's women and their father wound and men and their mother wound and merging together and creating more wounds and raising kids with wounds. And it's not a masculine or feminine problem. It is a separation problem. What do I mean by that? The foundation that supports all of duality, which is that we're separate. We're not separate. The truth is, in the quantum field, quantum entanglement, we're not separate. Men and women are not enemies. Masculine and feminine energies are not in a conflict. But because of the programming, the mind control, authoritarian family structures, which is pretty much everybody, school systems, government authority, structure, hierarchy, programming of roles. Because of that, it's all premised on the lie of separation. And what's happening at the frequency level, at the energy level, is that women feel separate from men and men feel separate from women. And so much of the bullshit on social media feeds into that. It's like, oh yeah, women are so hard to understand. No, we're not. Feminine energy is complex. Yes. I always describe women, the divine feminine, as the ocean. And the masculine energy is the ship on the ocean with clarity and direction. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But once you understand divine feminine, it's not confusing at all. It's not confusing at all. My husband has no problem understanding divine feminine. Is it different than masculine? Absolutely. That's the beauty. Thank God it's different. But it's not confusing, but so much of what gets said out there, these mantras repeated, and you see like groups of women going out, drinking wine and like talking about their husbands, how bad they are, how horrible they are. It's like, do you think that sitting around drinking alcohol, talking shit about the man you're going to go home and have sex with, if you're even going to do that, which is probably doubtful if you're doing what you're doing now, but you think that that's an activity that's contributing to the health and the growth of your marriage? You're delusional. It's a toxic behavior. In the same way men do the same thing. Again, there's no fault here. But what has to be understood is that if you're a person who says you want to have a good relationship with your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your future, fill in the blanks, because you're single at the moment by choice or not, but right now you're single. If you're a person who genuinely wants a divinely conscious relationship, you need to leave fault at the door. You need to leave the lie of separation at the door. We're not separate. We're not at odds. Women are not bad. Men are not bad. There is a horribly toxic relationship pattern that predominates on the planet. And it is why the vast majority of people have shitty relationships to varying degrees. And what I was starting to say before was that you would be hard pressed to find a relationship where two people, both people, are thriving as individuals and happy in their relationship and feel loved and feel seen and feel heard and want to be with their partner as much as possible. Of course, they have their own things that they're doing, their own interests, but they prioritize the partner. You know, it's something else that has to be said. It's a core element of what I teach, that in your life as a human, you got to pick like your 3 or 4 priorities, not 10. And if you're in a relationship, that has to be one of them. Maybe your career path, if you're an entrepreneur or some other career, that's another. And yourself, your health, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health, you have to be one of your own priorities, listed up there, written down, including your relationship with God, your relationship with yourself. But then your other relationships with your spouse, with your kids, that has to be number 2. Like it has to be. And if you're going out drinking and having wine and talking shit about your husband or your boyfriend, it's not even on your list, because that's not how a person behaves when something's a priority. It's just not. And the reason I posed the question as, to say, if you're a person who desires to have a conscious, beautiful, happy, joyful, supportive, loving, safe relationship, you have to leave fault at the door. You have to break yourself free of the shell, the hard shell that it gets glommed on you from childhood. It's a lot of mental programming too. You got to blitz through the neurons and the neural pathways that have made you believe the opposite sex is the problem. And you got to stop talking like your mother and how she talked to your dad, if that's relevant to you. If you're a woman, if you're a man, you got to stop shutting down and running away like your dad did. No emotions, or leave the room or walk out of the house, or rage and get angry. Those are the typical response of the distorted masculine. Everybody who has a father, guarantee 99% of you saw some version of that. Either yelling if emotions started to get high, or, yelling, raging, throwing shit, maybe being abusive, maybe not, maybe just getting very rageful and everybody quiets down. Kids are scared, mom's scared, everybody shuts up. Control, power move. That's the raging dad, the distorted masculine, or the ignore everybody, shut down, move, leave, get a divorce, have an affair, run away scared. Both of those are the scared little toddler, the very terrified little boy. Just 2 different ways to manifest that. You got to leave that at the door. You can't keep reacting like that as a man and as a woman. You can't nag. If you had a mom who was nagging and constantly telling the husband, do this, do this, do this. You never do this. You never do that. She's lonely. That woman who's always telling her partner what to do, she's lonely. She's trying to control him. She feels powerless. She's sad. Probably, very minimal passion and intimacy and limited sex life. That's what that woman is, the nag. trying to control, trying to manipulate, because she feels that's the only way she can have that person near her, even if it's with controls. People do the same thing with their kids. Or it's the, raging mother, the narcissistic mother who controls. And then there's a very, what we would call like a beta male husband, right? These are like the essential dynamics of the vast majority of homes. So toxic for each other, so toxic if kids are raised in that environment. But whatever parts of what I'm saying resonate with you, you have to throw that out. You have to leave it at the door. You have to understand that that's not divine. That's not divine masculine. It's not divine feminine. It is no kind of role model if you genuinely want to have a beautiful, amazing, conscious relationship. And I say that question, I've been repeating it like 6 or 7 times now for a reason. Because you really have to ask yourself, in listening to a relationship podcast, right? You have to ask yourself, is that what you really want? Because there are a lot of people that just want to cling. They don't really want a divine, conscious relationship. And I say that because it takes some work. People are afraid of that word. I don't use it often, but it actually does take some work. Not hard. It's not hard at all, but it is work. I say that about my own career, right? I work, but it's not difficult. I love it. I'm so passionate about what I do that, I'm gone on a 2-week vacation and I'm like, can't wait to come back and do my work. That's how much I love it. Relationships are the same way. When you're in a good one, when you're in a conscious one, you look forward to evolving, to having deep, intimate conversations with your partner where you just listen to them because you want to listen. You don't initiate conversations because you're pissed off and you have 10 things you want to say to them and they open their mouth and you cut them off, you interrupt them. Or if you're disciplined enough to be quiet while they talk, you just, in your head, you're just waiting, you're waiting, because the minute they stop, you have shit to say and your shit's more important. That's not evidence of a desire to have a conscious relationship. If you really, really want a conscious relationship, if you're in one right now, you need to leave all that at the door. If you want to be in one in the future, you're lucky because you can prepare yourself for that. You can prepare yourself to be the best absolute version of the divine feminine or the divine masculine. So that when a person who is aligned comes into your life, they're not going to be perfect. They probably haven't even listened to this podcast. They probably haven't done any healing work. Maybe they did a little. But what a core and key element of an aligned partnership, and a lot of people have asked me that, how do you know it's aligned? I'll tell you how it's aligned. Because that person is willing to do whatever it takes in their personal healing path, in their personal growth path. They're willing to do the work, whatever it takes, to be in a harmonious partnership with you. That's all it is to be aligned. Is when two people say, you know what? We have something here. We have something here. And, I know a lot of people believe in love at first sight. We're not going to have that conversation. It's a topic all in of itself. But I will say, even people who feel that, there are plenty of people who say that and feel that and they get a divorce, 5 years later. But even if you feel very strongly you have that, or you believe in that and you want that and you want to manifest that, great, awesome. But there's still work because two people who have a life, who have wounding, need to evolve individually. So somebody who is aligned, right? Somebody who is aligned is going to be somebody who says, you are worth it. You're worth it. And it's so important. It's so important that you look for that. That you look for the person who says you're worth it, not just once, not just in the beginning, but every day. Shows you by their actions that you're worth it. And neither person should have an expectation of perfection. Neither person should have any projections on how the other person needs to be. But each person needs to commit that they're willing to do whatever it takes to become the best version of themselves in the context of that relationship. And without fear, because sometimes when people grow and expand into the best version of themselves, and the other person's doing that too, they're not compatible anymore. And that's okay. That's totally okay. You can't be afraid of that. But again, that goes back to this fear of being alone. You can't be afraid of that. You want to come into a relationship, especially if your desire is to have a conscious one, a harmonious one. You have to enter into this sacred container of a relationship. And it is sacred. It's so sacred. It's so profound. It's such a blessing. It really is. When you take a step back and look at, all relationships are sacred, right? Relationships with our children, relationships with our friends, with our parents, with our siblings, with our, communities, with our intimate partner. They're sacred. It's something that I think has to be said in any conversation about relationships is an understanding that every relationship is sacred. And I don't see a lot of that in people, in how people talk to each other, how people talk about the other people they're in relationships with, how people talk about their kids to other people, how they talk about their wife, their husband. I don't see a lot of sacred energy frequency, but there needs to be. There absolutely needs to be if you want and desire to have a conscious, happy, joyful, passionate, loving, enriching, growing relationship. You have to value the container of that relationship as sacred. You have to see your partner as sacred, as an imperfect human who makes mistakes, who doesn't need to, check off some list of 20 different things you think you want in a husband or a wife. I can't stand when I see people do that. They think they're going to write a list of, this partner in the future needs to have all these things. Burn that. If you do anything, just burn it. Simplify your life by just asking God, asking the divine. If your desire is to be in a relationship, that when you are in one, when you're blessed to be in one, if that's what you desire, that you have a partner who believes that you are worth doing what it takes to be your partner, who loves you on a very deep level, who is committed to you, who is loyal to you, and who shares common life direction And what I mean by that is, of course, things like having kids or not having kids, those are important. Life direction. Are you a person who wants to live in a certain type of climate or a certain location? Another person is like the exact opposite. Those things can be overcome, but it's good to have those things aligned. It makes things much easier. I just spent 2 weeks in freezing cold New York and had an amazing time, and I'm from there originally, but very happy that everybody in my family, husband and kids, are like, yeah, we're happy to be getting back to warmth. It does help, right? And those things are part of what makes an aligned relationship. But when you're seeking the aligned person, you can't seek to have a person who has, every single one of these things checked off. But certainly the important things, your values, shared values, what you value in life, what's really important to you, which when you're in the divine feminine or the divine masculine, you kind of have to take an inventory of yourself. And the first thing you do is you say, okay, this relationship is sacred. My partner is sacred. They are so valued. And I need to remember that. I need to treat them like that. Because there will be days where, things are going haywire, or you may have issues at work or issues with your health or who knows what, right? It's the human life. You have to keep prioritizing the sacred nature of your relationship so that you don't become a person who is lashing out, being reactive, and starting to treat that person as if they're not sacred anymore. Right? Because once you start going down that road, you're breaking down the frequency. You're not increasing the frequency. Nothing's growing anymore. You're not nurturing or feeding that. And that's the responsibility of both people in a conscious relationship. But you have to embody your energy, as I said, as I've been saying, whether it's divine feminine or divine masculine. And you have to understand what that means for your partner. And likewise, your partner has to understand what that means for you. And one of the things that I have shared many, many times is that it is the role, it is the job, it is the responsibility of the masculine to hold space for the emotions of the feminine. Why is that the case? Ocean, ship. The divine feminine, when she feels safe, which is an absolute prerequisite, because one of the reasons most women today are in their masculine, they don't feel safe. So they are embodying masculine to make themselves feel safe because they're not getting safety from their partner. But when the divine feminine feels safe and she trusts that her masculine partner is not going to run away like a scared little boy, which translates to, having affairs or leaving or divorcing. When she trusts that that's not going to be a behavior from her partner, when she trusts that he's also not going to shut down, close off, get moody, act like a baby, that's version number 2. She also trusts that he's not going to rage, yell, throw things, break things, push her, block her from moving down a hallway, stand in front of a door, not letting her leave, all these violent behaviors, which those are all violent, by the way. When a divine feminine trusts that her man or her masculine partner, if it happens to be a woman in a same-sex partnership, when the divine feminine is safe and she trusts that she has a divine masculine, her emotions can be set free. And there's nothing more magnificent than a safe divine feminine in the context of a relationship. Because as a man, if you're a man listening, if you're a divine masculine listening, and you're waiting, you're waiting to understand and to hear why you have to be the container for this. And, I'm getting to that. But as a divine masculine, when you have a feminine partner who is able to be in her full divine feminine because she's safe and she trusts you, the depth that she will give you her love and her passion and her loyalty and her receptivity, and energetically her submission, right? At the most safe level, the divine feminine, as wild as she can be, her energy is submissive in the context of male-female energy. But most men never see that. You see all these 50 Shades of Grey or whatever that bullshit is, and people that have these BDSM, and those are all just really tragic, dark, low-frequency distortions of what people think or hear when they hear the word submission, right? It's a cry out for help. It's toxic. It's destructive. It's not real. It's not real at all. It's like people playing a game or like a role. I'm talking about true essence of divine feminine and divine masculine. And the thing about the feminine, and masculine knows this, men know this in their heart, in their soul. It's why most men are so terrified of women. They really are. It's something my dad taught me when I was very young. He's like, the reason there's war and the reason there's rape and abuse against women and oppression and control and men controlling everything on the planet, thousands of years, because men are terrified of women deep down. You talk to some of these alpha male, like these Andrew Tate type, they'd be like, oh, there's no way. Yes way. And the only way they feel safe is to be big bullies, which they call alpha. It's just a schoolyard bully that, masks itself as chivalry or some nonsense. It's not real. They're terrified. Terrified. Because why? The divine feminine is the ocean, right? What happens in the ocean? You can drown. The ocean can put out any fire, can erode any fucking rock. There isn't a force more powerful than the ocean. There's not. And we all know it. Because the divine feminine carries the power of creation. And distorted masculine is fucking terrified of that. But, and it's a magical but, when you are a man or a divine masculine as a woman, if you're in a same-sex partnership, who can hold the space for the emotions of your divine feminine counterpart because you've made her feel safe. You have shown her by actions, not flimsy words, because women don't care about words. They don't. Women are too smart, too intuitive. Words mean nothing to a woman. It's always about action. Men, the masculine needs to be an action taker continuously proving, and yes, proving to the feminine that you are safe, that you are not going to run, that you're not going to shut down, that you're not going to rage or hurt her or cause harm. You have to keep doing it, acting it, proving it over and over and over again. And when she gets to the point where she feels, trusts, and knows that you are safe, you are her safety, you are her container, and she begins to move energetically like the ocean that she is, that she always has been, but that's been repressed and trapped and contained her whole damn life by society, by other women, by her mother, by her father, by her boyfriends, her ex-husband. But when you allow her, by your presence, by your action taking, you allow her to unleash. And not allow by giving permission, because she doesn't need your permission. But it's by your actions of creating a safe space. When you create that, and she reaches the point where she trusts that and believes that and unleashes the wildness of the ocean, the depths to which she will love you and have complete passion for you, and only, it will be like you're the only male that exists on the planet. Her devotion will be to you. Her heart will be for you. Her sexuality will be for you. It will all be for you. And I have to tell you, most men will never know, will never get to experience what that is. It's the most unbelievably blissful experience on earth. And it is actually the experience that all men are craving and seeking, thinking they're going to find it in 50 different women, thinking they're cool because they've had sex with 100 women or 200 or whatever, or deep down, what they want is what I just shared with you. And tragically, most men or women are never going to get that, because it only happens in the sanctity of a divine, conscious relationship. And men have to work at this, right? Because you're scared. You are. I'll tell you what the most terrifying thing is for men. Blanket, all men. An angry woman. An angry woman. Why? It triggers a primal fear that if a woman is angry, takes them right back to childhood, right back to mom. Mom being angry at the son. The most terrifying pattern begins, anchors into that boy, stays with him his whole life. Because an angry woman, energetically, to an unhealed, distorted male, feels like death. Because you're about to be disconnected from the source. From the source. It's very different for a mother who's angry at a daughter, which is a subject of a whole other podcast. We're not even really talking about mother wound in depth here, but it's so central to relationships. But a mother, let me explain to you what's happening on the quantum energetic level here. When a mother is angry at her little boy, whether it's, some mothers are angry from day one, stop crying, stop this, Some mothers hit their kids. Some mothers punish their kids, angry, yells at the son, whatever. A lot of mothers take their misery that really should be for their husband to deal with, but they project it onto their sons. Other mothers, enmesh their sons. Here's 20 more podcasts coming on this topic. But a mother who is angry and expresses that anger at her son, let's say yells in an emotional way, because we're talking about the emotions of the partner that the man has to hold space for and why men can't do it. They can, but they can't in the unhealed state. And the mother is angry at the son. What happens is instant terror. That little boy feels like he is about to die. Because to be a little boy and to be cut off, because that's what it feels like. When your mom's angry at you and you're a little boy, you feel the death energy coming at you because you're about to be cut off from the source of all life. That's what it feels like energetically. Now, for little girls whose moms are angry, it doesn't feel like that. Because even though we're little, we have within us a womb. We have the force of creation. We don't know it. Of course, nobody knows. This is not a logical or analytical thing. It's just what's happening energetically. But we have an innate knowing. We're not happy about an angry mom. Nobody is. It can be scary to both boys and girls, especially if the mother's abusive physically or verbally. But energetically, it's different, which is the distinction I'm making. As a little girl, and if we have an angry mother, you don't feel like you're being cut off from the source of all life because you are the source of all life. You're a woman. You're a divine feminine in this life. So you are the source of all life. You actually are the source of creation. You have the birthing energy frequency. So you don't feel energetically that you are about to die. You might be scared. You might, have behavioral reactions to an angry mother. But it's not terror in the way that it is for little boys with their moms. Because when the mom is angry at the little boy, it's as if they're dying. Because the source of love, the source of creation, the source of birth is being shut. The door's being shut. I can't even explain to you the level of terror, what that does to imprint on the blueprint of that little boy's life, that little boy that will grow into a teenager and then into a man, and what that does and how it carries with them. That is why men are terrified of women's emotions, and why throughout history, men have said women are hysterical. They need to have hysterectomies. Women are too emotional. Oh my God, women are so emotional. People say that like it's a negative. The truth is that the wild capacity that we have as women to have shifting tides of emotions, just like the ocean, it's such a massive blessing. It really is when women are able to express that freely. Now, yes, toxic women, distorted women, that's the majority of women. Just like I say, the distorted men is the majority. Most women have no idea how to handle their own emotions. They are raging at their kids, nagging and yelling at their husbands, or shutting down, playing games, using tears and false crying to manipulate, all the games, all the nonsense, that's distorted feminine. So of course there are unhealthy expressions of emotion when people are screaming in your face. Being disrespectful should never be okay. Abuse, throwing things, breaking things, threats, threatening to divorce you, threatening to leave you, anything with a threat, toxic, distorted, not divine. Any kind of ultimatums. If you don't do this, I'm leaving you. I know men and women both do that. Totally toxic. If someone gives you an ultimatum, I've said this to many of my students, that's the moment you walk out the door permanently on that relationship, unless they're going to dramatically and instantly stop doing that and start healing. Because ultimatums are so toxic, so controlling. So when I say that the divine masculine has the responsibility of holding the container for the emotions of the divine feminine, in no way, just to be clear, because men have asked me this in the past, students of mine, in no way, number one, should you ever be dealing with toxic behaviors, which I just described. But we're talking about divine feminine, divine masculine, and couples that are moving into those roles. But to be able to sit there and face a woman who's angry. She may be angry at you. She may be angry at what you did or something that happened. For you to be able to listen lovingly to her anger, to her wild emotional state, whatever it is, without becoming aggressive, without reacting with your own anger back, right? And here's the problem where most men go, but oh, wait a minute, Liana, you mean she's allowed to be angry and I'm not? In that moment, yes, that's exactly it. That is exactly what I'm saying. Why? It's your job as a divine masculine to be able to have a pause, to be able to control your own emotions, not hers. If you want to have a divine relationship, that's the only way it works. I know a lot of people can't wrap their brain around it. They want to disagree with it. That's fine. You'll never have a divine relationship. You have to be able to pause, not repress, absolutely not. There is absolutely a need and an importance for men to be able to express their emotions, to be heard, to be listened to be respected, to be given that opportunity, but not at the same time. Again, nothing is equal. This is not where, oh, because she got to do it, I got to do it. This isn't fifth grade recess out on the playground. We're talking the highest level of divine, conscious, spiritually aligned, beautiful, magical, blissful, growth-oriented relationships. Those are the ones I teach about and talk about and have and wish everybody has or will have if they choose that. You absolutely have to become a man who is disciplined enough to know that when the ocean is raging, just like if you are a person who lives on an island like I do, you've been in the ocean. I'm sure most of you have been in the ocean, if not all of you. You have to observe it at first. You have to respect its wild nature. You have to respect the power of the ocean. That's actually what the divine masculine is doing when he takes a step back to assess the situation. That's the role of the man. The divine masculine, whether it's in a male or a female, again, but that's the role of the masculine. The ship is the steady one at all times, not just some of the time. When you grow into your divine masculine self, that's who you become, and you will love it. You will love being that. It will feel so good to know that you're the source, the container, the stability for this amazing, wild woman that you have set free. Because the only way she got totally free is in the context of your container. That makes her feel safe. And she trusts you. So as the divine masculine, you stabilize the situation. Picture yourself standing at the beach. You're looking at the ocean and you pause. It doesn't mean you're never going to get to go swimming or you're never going to get to go surfing. That's the analogy for, it's not like you're never going to get to share your emotions and your anger and you're pissed off or whatever you are. Of course, just not right now, because it's not really safe, right? You want, a fly. You want to sit there, stand there, and observe. Because masculine power, true masculine power and strength, the kind of masculinity that makes a divine feminine know that her partner can withstand even the biggest of waves, the wildest of tides. That's what creates extreme attraction, extreme devotion, extreme passion, because she knows she's been set free. And you will feel as a divine masculine so fulfilled, because for the first time in your life, truly, I promise, for the first time in your life, you will fully be in your masculine energy. You are not looking for somebody to be your mother. You're not trying to heal your mother wound through your wife, through your partner. When you become that stable, strong, masculine energy, observing, seeing, assessing the situation before doing anything, you're observing, you're allowing. You have, if you're a person standing by the ocean, you have no choice but to allow, right? Of course, the ocean's going to do what the ocean's going to do because it's the ocean. And the ocean always does what it wants to do, whenever it wants to do it. But when you take that same energy into your relationship and you're observing your partner, your divine feminine partner, you're patient, you're stable, you're strong, you feel the most masculine that you've ever felt in your whole life. And nothing feels better than that. Literally nothing can compare. Why? I'll tell you why. Because as human beings, whether we are divine feminine or divine masculine or seeking to be those, right? Get out of the distortion and into the divine. When we are living our lives as the truest, most authentic frequency of who we are, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. Right? For a woman to be able to be her most free self, who's safe, who feels safe at all times, and has trust and has love and has support and feels free all the time, liberated, free, and lives our life that way. Because I can tell you from experience, my whole life is lived that way. My work, I'm free. My art, I'm an artist. My painting, my creativity, I am free. My mothering, free. Serving as that example for my kids, for a son and a daughter. What does divine feminine look like, act like, talk like? How does divine feminine raise children? So much peace, so much harmony, so much creativity, so much expansion when it's a freed divine feminine that can be fully herself, the best mother, the best wife, the best partner, the best lover, the best everything, just like it is for the divine masculine. When you are embodying your divine state of masculine. That's the truest version of you. And it will translate to everything you do. Your life will expand in unbelievably magical ways because it's such a high and a powerful frequency to be in your divine masculine, or for a woman to be in her divine feminine. There's nothing better, literally. And when you have that alchemy together, it's pure magic. It's not perfect. You're still human. There's still, in no way am I saying to people that, oh, there's this state where, you never have a disagreement or you never have. No, of course not. But I will tell you, it's very, very, very few and far between. And when you have a disagreement, it doesn't turn into a conflict. It turns into a conversation. Because divine feminine and divine masculine become this beautiful synergy of communication, of safety, of trust, of love. And in that container, you resolve you resolve disagreements so they don't become conflicts. They really don't. They really don't. Because you are always together in the inner sanctum of your relationship. You are never, ever opposing each other. You're not on opposite sides of anything. You're not ever in a war, in a conflict. You're always seeking harmony. So when you disagree on things, you stop what you're doing and you have a conversation on how to become harmonious on whatever the topic is. Where can we evolve together? How can we have a solution here? And I will tell you this, and this is something that came directly from my husband, experiencing it as a divine masculine. When you're standing there holding the space energetically for the divine feminine, and she's angry and expressing herself, and you're there lovingly, you might be pissed off, totally fine and normal. In no way am I suggesting otherwise. You're just observing and listening and paying attention, just like you would be at the ocean. You're not worried about what you're going to say or waiting with bated breath to unleash your anger. No, you're literally actually holding space, because she loves you and you're in this divine partnership, and you know that when the seas calm, once again, you'll be able to share anything with her you want or need or desire to, whether it's anger, whether it's confusion, because she's always open and receptive to you. You just have to, have the right timing. And that's what it means to hold the container. So as you are holding that space and allowing her, observing while she's angry, listening, what's happening is your masculine energy is actually calming the seas. Now, we all know, we've heard a lot of people, it's in movies, it's in TV shows. You see a woman and she's, getting emotional, and they portray it as if that's problematic and not healthy behavior. And then there's a man somewhere, or it could be parents, that start saying, calm down. We all know the absolute worst thing you can say to any feminine, any female, any woman who is in an emotional state, worst thing you can say is calm down. Because first of all, they don't need to calm down. Now, if you're talking about toxic behavior and they're throwing things, again, I have to just bring that up and push it aside, because we're not talking about that. I covered it already, but just making sure. But if a woman is angry and she's expressing that anger and she's very upset about something, the absolute worst thing you can say is calm down, because she does not need to calm down, no more so than the ocean needs to calm down. You say that to the ocean, it's just going to, keep doing what it's doing. Those words are meaningless. Again, it's actions. Actions are everything to a divine feminine. So what's actually happening when the divine masculine is patient and has taken a pause, and the feminine emotions are, going wild, she becomes calmed down, ironically, right? But not really, because this is how it's supposed to work. Because you're not stable and steady and observing because you're trying to calm her down. Your goal isn't to calm her down. She doesn't need to be calmed down. You're just doing what the divine masculine does. Holds space, is steady, is stable, is strong, solid, trustworthy. And by being that, you give off that frequency. That's the energy coming off of your energy field. She becomes calm. Maybe not instantly. Obviously, it depends on the situation, but she will calm down. She will come to a place of rest, because she'll realize some of the excitedness, the energy of, wild, isn't that important to her anymore, because she's observing that she's being listened to. See, a lot of what we might call excessive emotions, emotions that borderline toxic or unhealthy, when somebody's just so overwhelmed and just crazy, upset and loud, and that comes from a woman who has never felt really heard by the masculine. So certainly not by her father, right? That comes from father wound. And I can tell you, and I've shared this many times with my students, literally never yelled. Not one time at my kids, and they're 23 and 18, not one time. No yelling. No, I don't need to raise my voice. I'm always heard. I'm always listened to. Never once yelled or raised my voice to my husband. It's not needed. So when you see somebody engaging, those would definitely be considered toxic behavior. Somebody's screaming and raging. That's toxic. That's not a healthy display of anger. Healthy display of anger is the words you're using and the tone of I am pissed off and here's why, right? Not crazy wild, in the sense of yelling and screaming at another person. That's toxic. But those are because those women behave those ways because they've never been heard. So when you're the man who's holding the space in your divine masculine, and she's angry and she's expressing it, she's actually coming into frequency with you. You are the one leading the frequency. That's the magic. That's the divine masculine. You, as the divine masculine, are the one that will determine the direction. That's why I say the woman is the ocean, the man is the ship on the ocean, picking a direction. That's your job. That's your role. Part of it. When you are stable and patient and allowing of this, tempest, whatever is happening in the ocean, you are setting the frequency, because you're the more stable, sturdy, steady in that moment. She will feel it. She will start to resonate with you automatically, energetically, because in that moment, you're the stronger frequency. And she will come into synchronicity with you. She will sync up with you. You're the one that gets to determine the frequency if and only if she trusts you enough and she allows that, right? Which, again, as I said earlier, only happens when she feels safe and she trusts that you're going to be this partner that is not coming back at her with rage, with anger, with running away, with all these other examples I gave you. And what you'll find over time, and I can tell you this from personal experience, what you will find over time is the wild hurricanes or the tornadoes or, the tidal waves will lessen in their intensity over time the more she trusts you. She'll realize it's not necessary, and she gets to make those decisions for herself of when she uses her power, how she unleashes her power. But she's never afraid to use her power, but she knows that, she doesn't need to overuse it because you're trustworthy. So you'll find over time in that relationship, as a divine relationship progresses, there'll be less of those super intense moments of anger or, intensity. Things will become quieter, energetically speaking. And the kind of freedom and peace that comes with that is priceless. It's the ultimate in a divine, conscious relationship. And what the divine masculine finds, which is what I was saying earlier, this comes directly from my husband, is that by the time the ocean settles in and the intensity simmers a bit, by the time that happens, in this time that the masculine has been holding the space, he said to me, a lot of the things that I thought were bothering me or I was upset about, or in that time, literally in that time frame, he's holding the space and being that stability, that frequency. Some of the things he thought were actually upsetting aren't at all. Like, they're gone. He said that to me. He said they're gone. I realized through the process that that's actually not even a thing anymore. It's not even important. So by having the patience, having the stability, having the divine masculine embodiment and that frequency, some of the things that in your old self, in the distorted masculine self, that would have been reactive and fighting and feeling like you're in opposition to your partner and in a combat, or you have to be defensive, when you realize there's nothing to defend. You're not defensive ever. You don't need to be defensive with this divine feminine that you love. There's no reason to be defensive. And that goes both ways. She doesn't need to be either. When you can put all your defenses down because you're not facing an enemy, you're facing a lover, you're facing your sacred partner, all your defenses are down all the time. You're never going to war, even when she's angry and the ocean is raging. You're not at war. You're not in a conflict. It's just a wild time, and you're patient and you're calm, and anything you need to express, you will, because she always gives you that opportunity. And when the ocean settles and she says to you, what do you have to share? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? She invites you in. She's receptive to you. She's completely open to you and says, I'm ready now. Things are simmered. I'm ready. I want to hear everything because I care, because I love you. And I'm here to listen and, be here for you. And then what you have as a divine masculine is another one of the most amazing feelings in the world, which is a person who loves you so deeply and is so soft and receptive and open. She's not fighting. She has no defenses. She doesn't see you as the enemy. She cares so deeply. The energy is nurturing and warm and embracing for you to share. If there are things that are still there for you that haven't dissipated, that you're upset about, angry about, confused about, then that's your time. And she's absolutely present in the best version of herself, which was not, 20 minutes ago when she was a tidal wave. But you've allowed the energy to simmer down. She's responding to you and has simmered down and come to a place of calm. And now you have the most open, receptive partner who wants nothing more than to resolve any issues or, work through any disagreements or whatever it is that needs to happen. You have a person who's 100% all in on helping that happen. What's happening in most relationships with disagreements and arguments and struggle and conflict is that the conflict escalates and they see each other as opponents and they're both defensive and they have points to prove and people to blame and fights to have and fights to be won. And maybe after 3 or 4 hours of sparring, like somebody gives in or you're just exhausted or maybe you get some resolution, but nobody walks away from that shit happy. I'll tell you that. When you have that kind of conflict and it's just round and around and around, nobody goes to bed feeling blissful and peaceful. You feel like you've been through a fucking war. It's not good. It's not nurturing. It doesn't feel safe. It's exhausting for men and women. It's a constant conflict. And it never really goes away because the next time you have a disagreement, it all gets reactivated again and all the unresolved shit from the earlier times just pops right back up again because it never went anywhere. There was actually no healing, no resolution. People just get tired at some point. They move on to something different. Somebody gives in, somebody comes up with a temporary fix and you move on with your day or your night or whatever. But the essence of the divine masculine is to hold the space and be the container, be the ship. That is literally, like I've just given you in this episode, I've given you the magic formula, truly. I kid you not, this is no joke. I've just given you the magic formula for the foundation of the best possible relationship. And if you're in one, you can start working on it right away. You can start working on mother wound and father wound to get through some of the hurdles. You can start understanding what it takes. And your brain may fight it. And your brain may say, but that's not fair. But what about that? But what about... When you are ready to elevate into a truly conscious partnership, that's what needs to happen. And when you start doing it, your relationship, your partnership, your marriage will radically transform for both of you for the better, for the way better. You'll both be so much more fulfilled, so much more joyful, so much more passionate. You'll glow. You'll start aging backwards. I'm not kidding you. It's like it transforms everything when you get to live in your true energy, in your authentic energy. You can see it on your face. You're going to glow. And it translates to everything in your life, your work, your parenting if you're a parent, your personal self, taking care of yourself, your sex, life, all of it transforms for the better. And if you're single, listening, and you're not in a relationship, but you desire at some point to have an aligned relationship and you want it to be conscious, you're so lucky. This is so perfect because you can start becoming that partner right now. You don't need to be in a relationship to work on a relationship. That's the best part of this. That's what I'm going to leave you on to close out this episode. You do not need to be in a relationship to work on a relationship. Because a relationship is two people in a sacred container. You're already half of that. So if you're single at the moment, you're still half of a relationship that exists somewhere in the universe right now. Your relationship exists. If that's what you desire, in the quantum universe, if you desire to be in an aligned, loving relationship of the nature that I have described in this episode, it already exists. Because we know time isn't real. Everything is everywhere all at once. Your perfectly aligned divine relationship already exists. Your divine partner already exists, if that's what you desire. And if you do, and since that relationship already exists, you can already start working on it by working on yourself, because that's all you're going to do when you're with the other person anyway, is continue to work on yourself. That's how that works. That's the beauty. You get to create right now the best, most amazing, conscious, loving, supportive relationship because you're starting with yourself. And while you're not in the partnership in your everyday life yet, you're cultivating that relationship with yourself. And the more you love yourself, take care of yourself, strengthen yourself, look at areas that you need to grow in and that can heal, transform. As you do all of that, your signal, your frequency is getting stronger and stronger. And that goes out into the universe through, obviously, quantum entanglement. Everything we do at all times, everything we do, everything we think, everything we say is affecting everything in the universe. So as you are working on yourself, becoming the most divinely feminine or divinely masculine, whichever you are, as a single person right now, you're becoming the most divinely masculine or divinely feminine person you can be, and you're sending that frequency out there, that is attracting your partner to you through quantum entanglement. It has to. It can't not. That's how that works. That's how quantum entanglement works. And you get to have that partner who comes into your life at the right timing, in the right moment, and you'll already be the divine counterpart. And when you start from that frequency, even if the partner who comes into your life isn't quite there yet, let's say you're a divine feminine and the masculine that becomes your partner isn't quite at that frequency yet, it will happen for him so much faster by being in your presence, in your energy, and vice versa. If you're a divine masculine, it may be that the right partner that comes into your life, she's not quite there, but she'll certainly be a person who is willing to get there. And by being in your frequency, you guide the relationship in that direction. And when it's aligned and when it's the right relationship, your partner, whether it's male or female, will be ready, willing, and able to do the work, to do what it takes to be in that sacred union with you. So, balancing divine masculine and feminine, harmonizing masculine and feminine in a relationship is a beautiful journey. It is a worthwhile journey. It's a magical experience. And, I wish for all of you who desire that to have that, for you to have that in your life. And you can create that in your life by becoming that version of yourself. So on that note, we're going to close out and end episode 6 of She Can Have It All. And I feel like I said earlier, I feel like there'll be a lot of episodes forthcoming on relationships. It's such an important area. So many different topics, so many different avenues we could cover. I hope you enjoyed this one. And for now, that's it. Stay tuned. And I hope to come back at you with another relationship episode in the near future. So aloha, and thank you for listening, everyone.